Hello, my name is Nora, and I'm 30 years old. I wish I could tell you I came into this world with love, that I was welcomed with joy and soft lullabies. But the truth is far from it. I was born because of a mistake, a careless night between two people who barely knew each other. If it weren't for my grandparents forcing them to get married, I probably wouldn't even exist. My birth didn't bring happiness, it brought obligation. My father never tried to hide how much he resented me. "There goes my youth," he would mumble whenever I passed by. It was as if my presence alone reminded him of the life he could have had without me. My mother wasn't violent, but she wasn't affectionate either. She didn't hit me, but she also never hugged me. She never said she loved me. She never even looked at me the way a mother looks at her child. To them, I wasn't a daughter, I was a burden. A lifelong responsibility they were forced to carry. Growing up, there was only one rule for me: don't be a problem. I became an expert at staying invisible. I learned to walk quietly, speak softly, and disappear into the corners of the house. I would sit in silence, trying not to draw any attention. But it never mattered. Even my quiet existence seemed to irritate my father. One sigh from me, one sound of my footsteps, and he'd glare like I'd just ruined his whole day. I started to believe I was the problem, that something about me, just me being alive, was wrong. For the first 10 years of my life, I lived like a ghost in my own home. I would watch other kids play outside, laugh with their parents, hug their moms after school, and I'd wonder if I had done something terrible in a past life to deserve this kind of rejection. Sometimes, I'd try to win my parents' attention in small ways. I'd bring home a good grade or draw a picture and leave it on the fridge. But no one noticed. Not once did they say, "Well done," or "We're proud of you." Eventually, I stopped trying. I stopped hoping. Instead, I started dreaming. Dreaming of a world where I wasn't unwanted. Dreaming of a life where I could just breathe without feeling like a mistake. I began to imagine a future where I mattered, even if no one else believed it. Because deep down, I had to believe in something, or I wouldn't survive. I used to sit in my small, shared bedroom and look out the window at night, wondering what else existed beyond those walls. I promised myself that one day, I'd get out.
I didn't know how. I didn't know when.
But I knew I couldn't stay forever in a home where love felt like a myth and silence was my only protection. Things changed when I was about 3 years old, when my sister Madison was born. That's when I learned what love looked like, just not for me. The day she came home, everything shifted. My parents held her like she was made of gold. They kissed her forehead, cried happy tears, and threw a small celebration. I had never seen them so alive. For the first time, I watched my father smile with pride. My mother, who had barely spoken to me without sounding tired or annoyed, lit up every time Madison made a sound. I stood in the hallway that day, invisible as usual, watching it all unfold. And from that moment on, I knew I wasn't the child they wanted, I was just the one they got stuck with. As Madison grew, the difference between us became sharper. She got everything new: new clothes, new toys, custom birthday cakes with candles and sparkles. I got hand-me-downs from people we barely knew: old shoes, faded dresses, and if I was lucky, a piece of bread with a candle stuck in it for my birthday. Madison's laughter would echo through the house, followed by applause. If I dared to speak too loud or laugh too much, my father would snap, "Be quiet, Madison is sleeping," or, "Why can't you be more like her?" That line, "Why can't you be more like Madison?" followed me like a curse. It didn't take long before I was no longer just ignored. I was assigned roles. "Nora, watch your sister." "Nora, clean up the mess." "Nora, don't touch that, it's Madison's." I became the in-house helper, the second mother, the built-in babysitter. Every responsibility landed on my shoulders, but not a single word of appreciation followed. Once, I asked my mother with a shaky voice, "Did I do something wrong?"
She didn't even look at me.
She just sighed. That sigh said everything. It said I wasn't worth an answer. But I didn't complain. I didn't cry or scream. I learned to exist quietly, to survive in the shadows. I faded into the background, and accepted my role. I didn't ask for hugs or gifts anymore. I didn't expect birthday celebrations. I stopped expecting love. But there was one thing I never gave up on: my dreams. They became my secret world. A place where I could be anything, anyone, except invisible. A place where maybe, just maybe, someone would finally see me. When I turned 10, everything became official. That was the year my mother handed me a mop and said, "From now on, you'll help around the house." It sounded simple enough at first: wipe the tables, sweep the floor. But it didn't stop there. Within months, I was doing laundry, scrubbing toilets, cooking breakfast, washing dishes, and folding clothes. By the end of that year, my mother had practically retired from housework. Every command in the house had my name in it. "Nora, the kitchen floor is still sticky. Clean it again." "Nora, Madison's sheets need changing." "Nora, you forgot to dust the living room." It was as if I'd become the unpaid maid of the family, with no days off, no breaks, and no thanks. Madison, meanwhile, floated through life like a princess. She lounged in her room with her tablet, painted her nails, and watched shows while I scrubbed and cooked. When she needed something, she didn't ask. She snapped her fingers, and I was expected to be there. I remember one day my backpack had ripped, and I asked my mom if I could get a new one. She looked at me like I'd just asked for a spaceship. "It still holds your books, doesn't it?" she said. A week later, Madison strutted into the house with a shiny new pink backpack covered in glitter and her name embroidered on the front. But as much as the material differences stung, they weren't the worst part. What hurt more was watching the way my parents looked at Madison, with pride, warmth, and admiration. My dad would pat her back when she brought home decent grades, and my mom would run her fingers through her hair and say, "My beautiful girl." I could have deep cleaned the entire house, cooked dinner, and polished the floor until it gleamed, and they wouldn't even ask if I'd eaten. I wasn't a daughter in that house. I was a body that moved around to get things done. I'd fall asleep exhausted, my fingers sore from scrubbing, my head heavy from silence. But inside me, I still held on to something fragile but real: hope. I believed that one day, if I worked hard enough, if I proved I was capable, I'd find a way out. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want pity. I just wanted a life where I could exist without being invisible, where I didn't feel like a mistake every time I walked into a room. I didn't know how or when, but I promised myself I wouldn't be stuck in that house forever. As the years went by, I kept doing the same chores, living the same routine, quiet, invisible, obedient. But inside me, something unexpected started to grow: a sense of vision. While cleaning the living room or folding sheets, I began to notice how things were arranged. I'd catch myself thinking, what if the couch faced the window instead of the wall? What if these colors were warmer? I started moving small items around when no one was looking, rearranging vases, centering picture frames, folding towels a new way. It gave me a strange sense of control in a world where I had none. That's when I realized I had a passion, not for cooking or fashion like most girls my age, but for design. Interior design. The idea that space could speak. That you could turn a dull room into a place that felt alive, just by moving things, adding light, or changing colors. My bedroom was the only place that belonged to me, even if it was tiny and old. I began to sketch out designs in a notebook I found in a drawer. I draw furniture, color palettes, and layouts. I devoured design shows online in secret and saved before and after pictures like they were treasures. The idea of turning a lifeless space into something beautiful fascinated me. I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not Madison. I knew they'd laugh. I could already hear it. Interior design? That's not a career. That's a hobby for rich women. But I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had something that was mine. Something they couldn't take or control. I started dreaming again, this time with more clarity. I wanted to become a professional interior designer. I wanted to open my own studio. Not just decorate a room, but change how people felt in their homes. I imagined clients coming in, trusting me with their spaces, and walking out amazed. I imagined my name on the front door of a bright, beautiful design office. Eventually, I gathered the courage to speak it out loud. One evening, when the tension in the house was low, I told my parents at dinner, I want to become an interior designer. I've been practicing, and I'm good at it. There was silence for a beat, then laughter. My dad shook his head. You? An interior designer? Nora, don't be ridiculous. My mother chimed in. How about something safe? Get a real job, office assistant, teacher, something stable. And Madison, ever the voice of cruelty wrapped in sweetness, smirked and said, maybe you can decorate fast food restaurants. I hear they're hiring. I swallowed my pride, clenched my fists under the table, and said nothing. But I didn't let it go. I knew what I wanted. And even if no one believed in me, I believed in myself. Later that month, after begging and negotiating, my father agreed to pay for a basic design course at the community college. Don't expect anything more, he warned. The house, the savings, everything, it's all for Madison. I didn't even flinch. I didn't want their house. I didn't want their money. I just wanted my chance, and now I finally had it. Design school was the first place where I felt like a real person. No one there knew about my past, the years I spent being treated like furniture in my own home. All they saw was a girl with ideas, someone with a good eye for color, space, and harmony. My instructors praised my vision. My classmates asked me for help. I stayed late in the studio, working on floor plans and 3D models, studying lighting theory, texture, and functional layout. For once, I wasn't invisible. My opinions mattered. My voice was heard. And most importantly, my work was seen. I dreamed that after graduation, I would get hired by a firm, build experience, and eventually start my own interior design business. I imagined my own office, stylish and warm, my name elegantly printed on the glass door. But reality hit me hard. I had no savings, no place to go, and no job lined up. My degree was solid, but design was a competitive field, and I didn't have connections. So with a heart full of hope and a wallet full of nothing, I had no choice but to return to the one place I swore I'd leave forever, my parents' house. The moment I stepped through the front door, it was as if those years away had never happened. Nothing had changed. The same faded couch, the same cold silence, and the same roles resumed instantly. My mother greeted me with a fake smile. Well, look who finally came back. Our certified decorator. She walked past me and added casually, you can start with the upstairs bathroom. It's a mess. Madison, lounging at the dining table with her perfectly manicured nails, didn't even look up. At least now she can be useful, she said with a chuckle. I didn't say a word. I just went upstairs and hung my diploma on the wall of my childhood bedroom. It was still the same cramped room, with the same peeling wallpaper and the creaky bed I used to cry myself to sleep in. But that diploma, that was mine. It reminded me that even in a house where I was still treated like a servant, I had accomplished something no one could take from me. Every day, I worked a full shift at a local furniture showroom. The pay was low, the hours were long, but I was gaining experience. I helped customers choose color palettes, rearrange displays, and shadowed senior designers whenever I could. I absorbed every bit of knowledge like a sponge. Then I'd come home, exhausted, and still be expected to cook, clean, and take care of everything, just like before. My mother never missed a chance to remind me, you may have a job now, but don't forget, this is still your house too. You help here. Madison, of course, still did nothing. She spent her days shopping, scrolling through her phone, and posting selfies about how blessed her life was. One afternoon, I came home from work and saw my father pulling into the driveway with a brand new white car. Madison's senior year, he beamed. My little girl deserves the best. I watched her squeal and hug him as he handed her the keys. I stood in silence, dirt on my shoes and tiredness in my bones, thinking about how I'd never even been allowed to borrow the family car without an argument. Once, I had mentioned saving up for a used car just to make commuting easier. My father had laughed and said, with what money? You can't even afford your own room. It was clear I wasn't seen as a daughter. I was a tenant who owed them rent, chores, and silence. That Thanksgiving, I decided I would do something, anything, to feel like I mattered. I spent weeks saving whatever little I could. I couldn't afford shiny gifts, but I wanted to bring something special to the table. So I bought lottery tickets, not the cheap kind, but the premium holiday draw tickets. I wrapped them in envelopes, each one addressed with care, and placed them on the dining table that evening. When my family opened them, expecting expensive gifts, their faces fell. My father raised an eyebrow. Lottery tickets? Seriously, Nora? My mother shook her head. How thoughtful. Maybe next year. Give us coupons. Madison rolled her eyes and tossed hers aside.
Wow.
Can't even buy a real gift. So sad. Then my mother, with a mocking smile, said, and since Nora didn't bring anything special this year, I suppose it's fair she shouldn't get anything either. Right? They all nodded. They were actually serious. I felt the air get heavy in my lungs. I didn't say a word. I just walked around the table and calmly collected the tickets from their hands. You know what? I said, voice steady. I'll keep these. Happy Thanksgiving. And I walked away, not knowing that what I held in my hand was the beginning of everything. I tossed the lottery tickets into the inside pocket of my coat and threw the coat over the back of my bedroom chair.
I didn't think about them again.
After the way my family reacted, it felt like just another failed attempt to do something meaningful. I went back to my routine. Work, chores, silence. A few days passed, then a week. One cold morning during my short break at the showroom, I checked my phone and saw a missed call from an unknown number. I ignored it at first, thinking it was spam. But a minute later, it rang again. This time, I answered. Hello, is this Nora? A woman's voice asked politely. This is Kathy from the state lottery office. I'm calling to inform you that you're holding a winning ticket from the Thanksgiving holiday draw. I sat up straight. I'm sorry, what did you say? She repeated herself slowly, her tone calm but certain. Your ticket matched all 6 numbers. After taxes, your prize totals $4 million. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I felt the blood drain from my face. $4 million. The words echoed in my ears like thunder. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. Kathy continued explaining the claiming process, the documents I'd need, and the deadlines. I listened, but my mind was racing. I had never imagined this. Not in my wildest dreams. And yet, it was real. I had to see it to believe it. As soon as I got home, I pulled the crumpled tickets from my coat pocket, checked the numbers online, and there it was. Every digit matched. I had just become a millionaire. I wanted to scream, to dance, to cry, but I had no one to share it with. No friends close enough. No mentor to call. No family who ever made me feel safe. And yet, something foolish inside me told me to tell them. Maybe, just maybe, this would change things. Maybe they'd finally look at me differently. So, that night at dinner, I sat at the same table where they had mocked me.
My heart was pounding in my chest.
I cleared my throat and said quietly, I won the lottery. The Thanksgiving ticket. $4 million. The room went completely silent. My mother's fork stopped midair.
My father stared at me.
Madison's jaw slowly dropped. Then she jumped up. Wait, she said, that was the ticket you were going to give to Mom, wasn't it? That means the money belongs to the family. I felt the cold shock crawl up my spine. No, I said calmly. You all rejected the tickets.
You threw them back at me.
I took them back. My father set down his fork and folded his arms. Nora, you live in this house. You should share the money with your family. We've supported you all these years. My mother joined in, voice syrupy sweet. Do you even know how to handle that much money? Your father and I can help manage it for you. Keep it safe. I let out a bitter laugh. Help me? You only want control. And if I give it to you, I know I'll never see a cent again. Madison's voice turned sharp. You're so selfish. You've lived off us for years. You owe us this. I looked at her, stunned. I cleaned this house every day, made every meal, and gave Mom half my paycheck. I don't owe you anything. My father's face darkened. If you're not going to share, then you don't need to live here anymore. I stared at him. What are you saying? My mother stood too, crossing her arms. You have money now. Find your own place. We've let you stay here long enough. And just like that, I was no longer their daughter. I wasn't surprised. Somewhere deep down, I'd been expecting this day. What shocked me more was how calm I felt. I went upstairs, packed my few belongings into a bag, grabbed my documents, and carefully placed the winning ticket in a small envelope. I paused at the front door, looked at all three of them one last time, and said, "Thank you. Thanks to you, I finally know I don't belong here." Then I walked out and never looked back. No money in the world could buy what I felt in that moment, relief. I had no home, no family, but I had something far more valuable. Freedom. A chance to start over. And this time, I would build something no one could take away from me. The first thing I did was go straight to the state lottery office with my documents and the winning ticket. They verified everything, and when I signed the paperwork, they handed me a check with my name on it, $4 million. I held it in my hands, stunned. This wasn't just money. It was an exit, a clean slate, my escape from a life where I had always been treated as less. But I wasn't about to blow it on luxury or flash. I wasn't raised with love, but I had learned discipline. I wanted to be smart with every dollar. I wasn't running away from my past. I was building something beyond it. I rented a small apartment just outside the city. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was mine. My own key, my own front door, my own space where no one would walk in and tell me what to clean or how to act. I stood in the empty living room for a long time the night I moved in, just looking around in silence, soaking in the feeling of finally being free. I bought a simple mattress, a desk, a chair, and started building my life from scratch. Every morning, I woke up early and sat in front of my laptop with a notebook and coffee. I started researching how to launch a design business. I read guides, watched videos, and took notes on everything: licenses, business structure, branding, clients, portfolios. I wasn't just dreaming anymore. I was preparing. Then I started scouting for a space. After a few weeks of searching, I found an old storefront in the center of town. It had chipped paint, broken tiles, and a leaky ceiling, but I saw something no one else could see: a blank canvas. The landlord raised an eyebrow when I said I wanted to open an interior design studio there. "This place has been empty for years," he said. "You sure about this?" I smiled and nodded. "I'm sure." I hired contractors to fix the essentials, but I handled most of the layout and design myself. I picked every color, selected every fixture, placed every frame with care. The studio slowly transformed into a warm, welcoming space that felt exactly like I imagined: modern, inviting, full of light and texture. I named it Nora Designs. For the first time, my name was on something that mattered, and not because someone else allowed it, but because I built it myself. On opening day, I was terrified. I didn't know if anyone would show up, if anyone would care. But they did. A few curious walk-ins turned into consultations. Consultations turned into clients. Clients turned into referrals. I poured my heart into every project: small apartment makeovers, office refreshes, even baby nurseries. People started recognizing my work online. Social media helped me reach more clients, and soon I was getting booked months in advance. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. I wasn't trying to prove anything to my family anymore. I had no contact with them, no calls, no messages. And I didn't miss it. I was busy creating beauty, purpose, and peace for others and for myself. Every time I walked into my studio, I remembered the girl who used to clean floors in silence, dreaming of a life where she mattered. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who had taken back her power. And she wasn't done yet. Within a year, Nora Designs was no longer just a name on a door. It had become a respected brand. My client list grew, my schedule filled up, and I hired 2 part-time assistants to help with bookings and on-site organization. Word of mouth worked in my favor. People said they felt at home in the spaces I created. Some called me a natural. Others said I had a gift. Every compliment meant more than I could express, not just because it validated my work, but because for the first time in my life, people saw me for something good. Not as a burden, not as someone in the background, but as a professional with value. As the business expanded, I started thinking bigger. I found a second location across the city and opened another branch. I designed every inch of that space with the same love I had put into my first. Slowly, what once felt like an impossible dream was becoming my everyday reality. I hired a full-time office manager, Aaron, who quickly became my right hand. Then came Mark, a contractor I'd worked with on several projects. He was the first person who truly respected my process and my vision. Our professional trust turned into real friendship. Life became steady, purposeful, quiet in the best way. I still didn't talk to my family. I had no need to. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply done. The silence wasn't painful now, it was peace. I had my work, my team, my space. I had everything I had once longed for while sitting in that cramped bedroom in my parents' house. Until one afternoon, everything shifted again. I was reviewing project files in my office when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring twice before answering, more out of habit than curiosity. A familiar voice greeted me. "Nora, it's your mother." I froze. I hadn't heard her voice in years. There was no warmth in me, just stillness. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice calm and flat. She sighed, like the weight of the world had settled on her shoulders. "It's Madison," she said. "She lost her job, got caught stealing. No one will hire her. She's drowning in debt. We're all struggling. We need your help." For a second, I couldn't breathe. All those years of humiliation, rejection, and betrayal came rushing back. And now, suddenly, they remembered I existed? I paused, steadying my voice. "Now you thought of me?" I asked. "You kicked me out, told me I didn't belong. And now you want help." My mother's voice softened. "She's still your sister, Nora. Yes, she made mistakes. But she needs a chance to fix them. Please." I closed my eyes, searching inside myself for what I felt.
Anger?
Sadness?
Pity? No.
Just clarity. Madison wasn't my responsibility, but I wasn't her enemy either. I sighed. "I can hire her," I said. "But no special treatment. She follows the rules like everyone else." There was a pause then. "Thank you, Nora. I knew you had a good heart." I hung up before she could say anything else. That night, I sat alone on my couch, thinking about everything. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing. I had given them a chance, not because they deserved it, but because I had grown past needing their approval. Whatever came next, I was ready. Because I wasn't that invisible girl anymore. I was the woman who built a life from nothing. And I had nothing left to fear. Madison joined Nora Designs as an HR manager 2 weeks later. She walked into the studio looking polished, professional, and just as confident as ever. She shook my hand with a forced smile and said, "Thank you for the opportunity." I nodded without emotion. "This is a job, Madison, not a reunion," I told her. "You'll be expected to show up on time, meet deadlines, and treat everyone with respect. No exceptions." She blinked, clearly not used to being spoken to that way.
But she didn't argue.
At first, everything went smoothly. Madison arrived early, helped file paperwork, and even stayed late a few times. My team, especially Aaron and Mark, noticed her efforts and assumed she had matured. For a brief moment, I thought maybe she truly had changed. I began to let my guard down just slightly. But deep down, something didn't feel right. There was a tension in the office that hadn't been there before. A subtle shift in energy. A few employees seemed quieter. Some stopped coming to me with ideas like they used to. Aaron mentioned hearing murmurs of discontent, staff whispering in corners, glancing away when I walked by. Then one afternoon, Mark pulled me aside. His voice was low but firm. "You need to know something," he said. "There's talk going around. Madison's been telling people you underpay staff, that you hoard profits, and that this business should have been hers all along." I stood still, absorbing every word. He continued, "She's hinting that if they strike, you'll have no choice but to cave in or shut down." The betrayal felt like a punch to the chest. I had opened my door to her, again, And here she was, poisoning the ground beneath my feet. But I didn't react with rage. I didn't confront her that moment. I waited, observed. And when the studio's financials came in for the month, Erin walked into my office, looking pale. "Nora," she said quietly, "we're missing $10,000 in cash from the safe. It's not showing in any withdrawal log." My stomach dropped. Only a few people had access to the safe: Erin, Mark, myself, and Madison. Erin said she'd triple-checked everything. There's no explanation unless someone took it directly. I didn't want to believe it without proof. Not this time. So I had hidden security cameras installed near the safe and in the accounting room. Silent watchers, tucked behind vents and light fixtures. I waited, checking footage every night. Days passed. Then, one night, my phone buzzed with an alert. Unusual movement detected. I clicked the live feed. My breath caught. There she was, Madison. She looked around, opened the safe with ease, and stuffed wads of cash into her designer purse. My fingers trembled, not out of surprise, but finality. I had given her a second chance, and she had buried it under greed. The next morning, I called the police. There was no confrontation, no yelling. I simply handed over the footage and told them the truth. When they arrived at the studio and asked for her, Madison panicked. "What's going on?" she asked, eyes darting. I stepped forward. "You know exactly what this is. The cameras saw everything." Her face turned pale. "You wouldn't do this to me." I stared at her with calm finality. "I already did." As they handcuffed her in front of the entire staff, silence fell over the studio. But I felt no shame, only closure. Less than an hour after Madison was taken away, the front door to the studio slammed open. My parents stormed in, red-faced and full of fury, as if they had been personally betrayed. My father pointed at me, his voice trembling with rage. "What do you think you're doing, Nora? You called the police on your own sister?" My mother stood beside him, her eyes filled with tears, though not the kind that come from heartbreak. These were tears of entitlement. "She just made a mistake," she said, voice shaking. "Did you really have to be this cruel?" I stood still, my arms crossed, unwavering. "You mean the mistake of stealing from me?" I asked. "The mistake of lying to my staff, turning them against me, and trying to destroy everything I built." My father's eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this," he barked. "If you don't drop the charges right now, you're no longer our daughter." His words didn't sting like they once might have. They didn't feel like punishment, they felt like release. For the first time, I said quietly, "I agree with you. You haven't treated me like your daughter since the day I was born. So go ahead, pretend I never existed, like you did when you threw me out." My mother began to cry harder, clutching her husband's arm, as if trying to hold herself upright. My father stared at me a moment longer, his expression dark and bitter, before he turned and stormed out. She followed without another word. I watched them leave and didn't feel sorrow or anger. I felt peace. I had closed the door that, for years, I had left cracked open, hoping for love or recognition, or even a sliver of apology. But now I knew that some families never change. Some wounds are meant to heal. And I no longer needed anything from them. I had built something stronger, a life based on honesty, trust, and self-respect. The day of Madison's trial arrived a few weeks later. I went, not because I wanted revenge, but because I needed to see it through. Madison walked into the courtroom looking composed, her hair perfect, her clothes tailored, her expression soft and remorseful, as if she were the victim. When she took the stand, she sighed dramatically and spoke in a voice just above a whisper. "I never meant to hurt Nora," she said. "I was just desperate. I borrowed the money and planned to return it. But she called the police on me before I had the chance." I sat in silence, my fists clenched beneath the table. Then the prosecutor rose. "Ms. Madison, are you aware this isn't the first time you've been accused of theft?" Her face paled. I don't know what you're talking about." The courtroom doors opened, and in walked a man I recognized immediately, Madison's former boss. He took the stand and calmly explained how she had stolen from his company years ago and when caught, tried to frame him for misconduct to avoid prosecution. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Then came an audio recording of former employees confirming her lies. The story fell apart in seconds. The judge delivered the verdict swiftly, guilty of theft and fraud. Madison's tears came fast and loud this time as she begged the court for leniency. "Please," she cried. "This isn't who I am. I just needed help." When her eyes met mine, they burned with something colder than regret. "You'll regret this, Nora," she hissed as officers handcuffed her again. "You stole my life." I didn't flinch. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "No, Madison. You ruined your own life." And with that, I stood up and walked out of that courtroom, closing the chapter for good. After that day in court, I never saw or spoke to any of them again. There were a few attempts, voicemails from my mother, texts from my father, even a handwritten letter that arrived weeks later. Some messages were full of guilt and false affection, others dripping with blame and manipulation. Families shouldn't turn on each other. You destroyed your sister's future. We were just trying to protect you from yourself. I didn't respond to any of them. I had nothing left to say, and even less to prove. I had finally done what I had dreamed of since childhood. I cut the cord. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't grieving. I was free. I poured myself back into my work with more focus than ever. I hired new staff. I trained interns. I took on bigger projects that challenged me and excited me. I launched a YouTube channel and began posting videos with before and after reveals, client walkthroughs, and design tips. The channel took off, gaining followers who appreciated my honest voice and clean aesthetic. The attention brought in even more clients, and within the next year, I opened a third Nora design studio, this one in another state. My team became my family. Aaron, Mark, the new designers, the assistants, they weren't just employees. They believed in me.
They supported me.
They respected me. They saw me the way I had always wanted to be seen. Sometimes, when we'd sit down together for lunch in the office lounge, laughing over stories from difficult clients or celebrating a successful project, I'd glance around and feel something that was once foreign to me: belonging. One afternoon, I stood in the reception area of our newest location. The sunlight poured through the tall windows, falling across the elegant brass sign on the wall, Nora Designs, where space becomes soul. I touched it lightly with my fingertips and smiled. I remembered the girl who used to stare at cracks in the ceiling, imagining a better world. I remembered the sound of silence around the dinner table, the sting of being unwanted, the weight of doing everything right and still not being enough. And now I was here, not because of luck, not because of some miracle, but because I chose to believe in myself when no one else would. I took the pain they gave me and turned it into purpose. I took their silence and replaced it with a voice that people now paid to hear. I no longer had to explain who I was. I had designed a life that spoke for itself. And that life was mine. Every inch of it. Years passed, and Nora Designs grew into something far beyond what I had imagined in that small childhood bedroom. We had 6 locations across 3 states. My face appeared in magazines, my work featured in online design showcases. Clients came to me not just for style, but for the soul I brought into every project. I had everything I once thought was out of reach: freedom, respect, peace, and a team that felt like home. But more than any title or paycheck, what fulfilled me most was the quiet truth that I had made it on my own. There were no shortcuts, no handouts, just years of unseen work and unshakable determination. I no longer flinched when I thought of my past. I no longer wished for apologies or tried to make sense of what I'd been through. I had made peace with it. My past wasn't my prison anymore. It was the foundation I'd built this life on. Sometimes I'd get questions from new hires or collaborators. "Where do you get your drive from?" I'd just smile and say, "From knowing what it's like to be invisible." That always made them pause, but it was true. Being forgotten taught me how to see people. Being unloved taught me how to give warmth. Being pushed aside taught me how to claim my space. One evening, I locked up the original studio after a long day. I stood outside and looked at the sign above the door, Nora Designs. My name, my dream, my life. I took a deep breath and let the cool night air fill my lungs. There was no bitterness in me, no pain, only gratitude. Because I had not just survived, I had built something extraordinary from everything that was meant to break me. I used to be Nora, the girl who kept her head down, who stayed quiet, who was told she'd never be enough.
But now?
I am Nora, the woman who created beauty where there was once only neglect. The woman who turned silence into a legacy. The woman who walked away from the people who never saw her, and finally saw herself. And for anyone out there still sitting in a dark room, waiting to be seen, let me say this. You are not invisible. You are not powerless. Your past does not define your worth. You do. This was my story. And now it's yours too. Thank you for watching this powerful story of strength, betrayal, and redemption. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of your own journey, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more true stories that inspire, heal, and empower. Your support helps us bring more voices to light.